Happy Friday, guys, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Dubs. I'm your host, Bill T. Well, it's Friday, and you know what that means? It's time for another podcast, and this week's going to be a little bit modified because I'm out of town. I'm down in Orange County this weekend for the festivities that are taking place for the Cowlook 50th anniversary and the DKP cruise. So tonight starts with the cruise night at 4 p.m. at Wahoo's Tacos in Yorba Linda, and then tomorrow will be at the Yorba Regional Park. They'll be doing a DKP 60th anniversary. Then Hot VWs will have a special display there of their quote-unquote hand-selected vehicles to be on display. Come out, check it out. It should be a good time. That's what I'm going to be out here for. And then Sunday, we're with a bunch of the Europeans for the Cowlook cruise for a special Impy history tour that we're going to be doing in Riverside tomorrow. So been out here for a little bit this weekend and came out here originally. Didn't bring Zorba with me. I decided to bring... I had the chop top down at Scott Gildner's place, getting some touch-up work done. And since that car is kind of a Cowlook car, I had this conversation with someone yesterday. It's not 100% Cowlook, and you know, guys, you know how we roll here in Let's Talk Dubs world. We don't conform to everything 100%, but that car is a classic Cowlook-ish car, built in California, built by a Californian in Southern California, and it's got a hot rod vibe to it. So I actually think it's kind of maybe a little bit more Cowlook, but it's traditional in some respects, and it's a little bit different in others. But notwithstanding that, that's the car I decided to bring down this weekend. Well, not bring down. I was happen to be picking it up. So as it stands right now, as I am here in the hotel room this morning, broadcasting for you guys to have something, I am going to be headed to Northridge to pick up the car later today and hopefully get it back in time to be at the DKP cruise-in night at Wahoo's Tacos. But it's definitely going to be a good weekend. Lots of stuff. Hopefully I'll be getting a lot of stuff captured on video to put out a video. Still have a couple videos to put out. But before I get into all that stuff, don't forget to support our sponsors, VW Trends Magazine, a magazine for the people, by the people. Go subscribe today. Last episode had fantastic coverage of One Crazy Weekend, which is happening this year, October 2nd through the 4th, at the Orleans Hotel and Casino. For more information and to book your rooms and get your registration for the show situated, as well as getting signed up for the poker run, go to letstalkdubs.com. And don't forget to subscribe to VW Trends Magazine at vwtrendsmagazine.com. Also, Ross Wolf, high-quality aftermarket parts for enthusiasts, by enthusiasts. Jared and Jason just been putting their time and effort into developing some really cool parts. Lots of vintage high-post stuff coming out, so be aware of those things. Go check out their website today at rosswolf.com. That's rosswolf with the u.com. Check in the description below. Use the discount code LTD10 for 10% off on your purchases from Ross Wolf. So Icon Pistons, high quality pistons manufactured specifically for Volkswagens by one of the largest piston manufacturers in the U.S. Icon Pistons come with forged 4032 alloy aluminum for tighter piston and wall clearances and full round design for superior strength and longevity in street performance applications while keeping piston weight down. Anodized crown and top groove for resistance to corrosive fuels and prevents micro welding of the top ring to turbo motors. Double broach and forced pin oilers to keep the pin well lubricated. M42 skirt coating for extra skirt abrasion protection. Ring packs provided by Hastings, and all kits come as pistons, pin locks, and rings. These pistons are available in A, B, and C offsets from 85.5, 92, and 94 millimeter. So go check them out today. Click the link in the description below to buy the best quality pistons out there made by Icon Pistons. So on this week's podcast, I'm going to get into a little bit of the beginning of the Schley Brothers history, because I'm going to do a full comprehensive Schley Brothers history podcast with them, as well as some of the details. But for some of you that aren't familiar with the Schley Brothers, I'm going to do a quick 5-minute history on the Schley Brothers on this week's Let's Talk Dubs.
You probably don't know that there's a new Volkswagen out that doesn't look like a Volkswagen. It's got everything that people who like the bug like.
Okay, right. So on today's show, I spent some time yesterday with the Schley Brothers at their museum. I happened to catch them at the beginning of a tour that they do. And if you're ever in Orange County and you want to check out the Schley Brothers Museum, it's an epic museum of tons and tons of VW history that started way back in the day. But if you're like me and you're a little bit later to the game and you're not really into the vintage drag racing thing, I can give you a precursor of the Schley Brothers and a little bit of information to kind of help you understand how these two brothers that were early in the game of drag racing had such a huge impact on the advancement of performance products, parts, and engineering for drag racing, making them one of the first people. They're the first guys that ran 10 seconds in a Volkswagen Beetle. They set several records throughout their campaign of career, and they were very, very innovative, and it just happened to be a stroke of luck throughout several different aspects in there. They happened to be at the right place at the right time for so long. Mark and Paul Schley, as young boys in their early adolescence, they lost their father to a heart condition that he had. Putting the family in a little bit of a shock, Mom had to go back to work. At the time that this all happened, she didn't even have a driver's license. So the boys were left without a father and had to step up and help support the family. The boys were always into cars, and the time came for them to get a vehicle, and Mom took the boys to a dealership. Luckily, she brought along a neighbor to go with them. As Mom sees a big, powerful Mopar with bright, shiny paint, she says, "This car looks nice for my boys." As they pop the hood, it's got a big block motor in it with a dual cross ram intake manifold. As the boys are standing sheepishly by telling Mom, "Yeah, we think we like this car too," the neighbor says, "I don't think this car is really practical for young boys." So the next car they look at happens to be an old Starfire with an aluminum V8. The boys are pretty excited to do that. And during a test drive with the dealer representative, as they're driving around, a cute blonde girl drives by in a VW Beetle. As the boys start hooting and hollering at this girl, the sales guy goes to these young men and says, "What you boys really ought to buy is a Volkswagen. They're inexpensive to drive, they're cheap to maintain, and it's something for you guys as you're going to go to school and college and things like that. It makes more sense for you guys to get a Volkswagen Beetle." So a VW Beetle it was. Their black 1963 Beetle was purchased brand new. Now, at the time, Volkswagens were highly sought after, and the dealerships were back ordered quite a bit. So once they got their hands on this Beetle, immediately they started realizing that you could do some hypo mods to them here and there. With an opportunity to go see Dan Gurney at an event, at this particular event, they also meet Dean Lowry and Daryl Vitone. Now, Daryl is similar in age to them, so they have this kind of kinship. Dean Lowry, being a bit older, almost becomes like a father figure to the boys. Now, the boys are busy trying to hot rod their Beetle and do all this stuff, and they like to street race and get in some trouble. Dean, being the father figure type, tells them, "Listen, I'm only going to help you boys if you boys get a car and specifically dedicate it to racing. I don't want you guys out on the street racing. So if you get a car, I'll help you build a car you can take to the track." Well, that's all they needed to hear. And that's when they sought out that 1955 Beetle that later became the Lightning Bug. They dragged this car home, and with the help of some of the neighborhood kids, pulled the body off the shell and instantly went to lightning this car. Now, they picked up this car for a measly sum of $250, which back in those days was quite a bit of money. First step they needed to get was a Porsche 741 4-speed gearbox. Now, the reason they needed that was because Porsche had an availability of different gear selections so that they could modify the gear ratios depending on the type of racing they were going to be doing. It was also stronger than the standard swing axle. And from that point forward became the beginnings of the Lightning Beetle. Now, there's lots more history to cover with these guys and a lot of different details to get into. But one of the things as I went through their museum yesterday that I was impressed upon is the rampant amount of advancement and development that these guys did from from 1963 up until 1973. So for that 10-year period, they took the same car and continued to massage it and tweak it and make little modifications here or there. And in the world of racing, if it's not in the rule book, it's not cheating. So these guys focused on everything. Now, in the early days, they only had the 92 millimeter pistons available. And so certain motors were only available to be built at the time, like a 2110. Now, this 2110 motor that they have, the final iteration that finally broke into 10 seconds, was 256 horsepower. Now, that's a massive amount of horsepower in those early days. But it just wasn't horsepower that got them there. It was incremental changes throughout. Mark was working constantly with development, engineering, changing things, porting the heads, finding every single thing he could push to its maximum limit, and where it came to increasing performance to the car. So, for example, looking at one of their early drag cars, there's a second cylinder head stud that holds the intake manifold down that's got an ear on it that holds the corner of the manifold in place. Now, the rules were that you couldn't remove the stock intake manifold studs. So they had ported the intake manifold within 1,000th of an inch of that bolt. Now that they couldn't put a nut on it, they put a tab on a bolt, added an extra bolt to the cylinder head to hold it down. Those are the types of little intricate things that they did to try to remove weight, eliminate reciprocating mass, and increase the performance of every minute inch of this. There were so many things that they were so far ahead of the cutting edge with, whether it was their relationship with the early beginnings of autometer. Once they advanced from a regular distributor to a magneto, they needed a tachometer that worked with the mag. Well, the very first autometer gauge that was built was put in this Beetle. So that was one of the early autometer gauges that's in this Beetle. Their friendship with M&H Tires, they were doing some tire development, and they were tired of using recap tires that were super heavy. Well, these guys were able to provide a lot of data and feedback back to the manufacturer, and so they would continue to get advancements in tires before other people had them. These are some of the advantages that these guys took, and they took every advantage they can get, especially when it came to testing and porting and polishing and changing using different materials. As a matter of fact, their flywheel and their race motor weighed about 9 pounds. So everything with these guys was to remove weight, spin it faster, and get through the lights as quick as possible. They looked for every single thing they could do to advance, whether it was traction, power, to adjust everything for every track. So one of the cool things that they did was move the driver's seat back 10 inches. Well, the problem was they didn't want everybody else knowing they moved the driver's seat back 10 inches, so they had to fabricate a whole new bulkhead for the firewall and move that back 10 inches. So what they did is they cut the rear section of the tunnel out, a 10-inch section, moved the entire tunnel back 10 inches so it would match the shifter with the seat, and then replaced the cutout section with the front at the frame head area so you couldn't tell. The only way you could tell they moved the whole bulkhead back is if you look at the rod on the brake lever. It's about 10 inches long that goes to the master cylinder because that was still in the factory location. But it was minor advances like that that would give them the edge they needed to beat everyone at the track. Whether it was more traction they needed because of slippery track conditions. But there was so much innovation that these guys did, especially when it came to marketing and advertising themselves. They would reach out to radio stations, to local drag racing tracks, and kind of call out or do exhibitions against all of the fast local guys, which would then create a big buzz and get lots of publicity for them. With their early connection with IMPI, they were able to get a lot of test and development parts so that they could continue to push the envelope. Just for a simple example, in that 10-year span, they started with the stock steel wheels. Well, they wanted lighter. So then they moved to the Porsche style wheels that were aluminum. And then they moved on to different wheels that people would use. Up until finally they would have the spun aluminum wheels made. Now, they would make some for a track that you could buy, but they weren't the same. Their wheels were a little bit thinner and a little bit lighter than what you could buy legally for road use. These wheels were so thin, they weighed 3 pounds, 3.9 pounds per wheel. I don't know if you've picked up a wheel, but a stock steel wheel is about 9 pounds. So that's a substantial difference in weight savings. Now, if you take that, combine it with a little motor, and keeping that car at 1,060 pounds no matter what was their advantage. Every single thing that they could do to make that car faster, they did. Now, the advancements that they did and they were responsible for, we'll get into huge detail in the podcast that they did because it's numerous. The testing, the camshafts. Mark was heavily involved in doing different cams, and their relationship with Engel allowed them to have custom cams made, some of them that eventually moved on into production camshafts. So from their constant search and chase for one more horsepower. One example of one of the first things that they did is as they were at a drag strip and they saw one of the pro stock cars that were there, they looked at the merged collector. So as he's going back to Southern California and he sends to Fortuned Exhaust, he sends the drawing of what he wants, where he wants the 4 collectors to come together in a merged style collector, which gave them ultimately one more advantage at the track. You could say that their entire history in racing was every race there was one more advantage. They were constantly obsessing over every little bit of power and weight that they could manage to make that car that much faster. So when they end up with a merge collector, it's them and Dean Lowry have the extra merge collectors, and they have them well before they're available on the market. So it's not long before people start catching on to what the Schley Brothers are doing and start getting into copying everything that they're doing to try to get that advantage. So the story with the Schley Brothers covers years and years of all types of advancements, which I'm looking forward to bringing you that story with the Schley Brothers. I'm going to leave you a quick little story in their voice that I recorded this weekend while I was down there, and I hope you guys appreciate it. I'm really looking forward to bringing the full story of the Schley Brothers. But more importantly, one of the other things they did for all you guys that are out there turning wrenches and stuff, the Schley Brothers, which is Schley Product Tools, eventually they become, and one of the first things that they designed and developed was the flywheel lock. That was the beginning of what ended up being a lengthy career of Schley products that are still in business to this day, with over 700 specialty tools built just for mechanics. That's right. Volkswagen guys started that. So we'll bring you more on an upcoming podcast. So for now, I'm going to leave you guys there. Don't forget, if you're in Southern California, come check out the DKP Cruise Night tonight at Wahoo's in Yorba Linda, also Yorba Linda Regional Park tomorrow. They're going to be doing the DKP 60th anniversary and Hot VW's 50th anniversary of the Cowlook. So Cowlook celebration tomorrow. Hopefully I'll see you guys out there. And if you're out here bumping into me, say what's up. And hopefully you guys have a good time. Come check it out. And don't forget, next week, Niagara Falls. There's more information on where we'll be next weekend at the Niagara Falls show up there. So if you guys are in the northeast over there, make sure you guys head out to the German Air Niagara Falls show held at Niagara Falls Fireman Park. So more information, the link in the description below. Also, the German Air weekend, Friday night, they're having a social hosted by the Four Stack Mafia. Cruise by and have a beer with them. It's sponsored by Church Key Brewing Company. And that's going to be taking place at the campground that that's going to be taking place at the Four Stack Mafia Camp Park Resorts at 9387 Lundy's Lane, Niagara Falls, 7 to 10 p.m. on Friday night before the weekend kicks off. So go cruise by there, hang out with the Four Stack Mafia, and throw a few back with those guys if you're going to be in the area for the Niagara Falls show. So go check them out, guys. And hopefully you enjoyed this little bit of history. I'm going to bring you a ton more, and it's going to be good stuff. Also, we'll be doing an update from this weekend, and I'll be putting out a video for this as well. So until next week, guys, later.
You probably don't know that there's a new Volkswagen out that doesn't look like a Volkswagen.